So if you find this sleep story helpful or interesting, then give it a thumbs up, leave any comments that you've got below, and if you aren't already, subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you can receive notifications of when future sleep stories go live. I have dozens and dozens of stories already on my channel that you can go and search. I also release new stories every single week, so I hope you enjoy this story. So as you listen to me and you begin to comfortably fall asleep, I don't know whether you'll fall asleep quicker with the sound of my voice, or with the words that I use, or perhaps with the spaces between my words. And as you begin to comfortably fall asleep, I'm just going to tell you a story in the background. And it's a story about a man who is sitting on a beach. It's a nice, warm, sunny day, and the beach is quite quiet, and he's come here to sit down and relax. And while he's sitting on the beach, he's reading a book. And as he's reading, so his attention is being drawn into that book, drawn into the story. And in the background, he's aware that there's the sound of the waves lashing on the shore. He's aware of the sounds of birds in the sky. He's aware of distant sounds around him. He can feel the warmth of the sun on his face. He can feel what the ground feels like beneath him where he's sitting. And yet his attention is drawn into the book. And while he's reading the book, he finds that it's almost like the story jumps off the page and starts to form in his mind. As if he starts off reading and hearing the words recited in his own voice in his mind. And then gradually, that reciting voice fades away to almost experiencing the story on the page. And the story that he's reading is about someone out on a boat. And they're heading to an island. And the boat's bobbing up and down on the water and chugging through the water. And it's a warm, sunny day while this boat is chugging through the water. And there's blue sky, perhaps some wispy clouds, but it's a warm, sunny day. And as that boat continues, so the man on the boat notices the island coming into view in the distance. And he continues on that boat towards that island. And the boat continues to move with the waves, as well as moving through the waves. And on arrival near the island, there's nowhere to dock the boat. So the man drops anchor a little way from the island. He lowers down a little rigid inflatable boat off the back of his boat into the water, climbs aboard that, and powers towards the shore. And this smaller boat, as it gets closer to the shore and the waves get larger, jumps and bounces on the waves as it weaves and drives its way to the shore. And near the shore, the man cuts the engine, glides the boat up onto the beach, onto the island. And here on the island, the man can hear the sounds of tropical birds, the way the water laps onto the sand, the sound of the sand beneath his feet. And he starts exploring the island. He's here to discover something. And as he explores the island, he finds a beach ball that appears to have been washed up here. And almost instinctively, he picks up the beach ball, just to carry that beach ball and play with that beach ball in his hands. He doesn't know why, it just seemed to be an instinctive thing, that he saw it and so he picks it up and just walks along, tossing it gently into the air, spinning it slightly in the air, noticing the vivid, bold colours on that beach ball as he throws it into the air and catches it and spins it while he's exploring the island. And he cuts in to the trees, works his way through the trees. Then as the trees get denser, he has to put down the beach ball to continue, so that he can push through those trees. And after a while, he finds himself on the far side of this island, on a different beach. And on this side of the island, he notices that the water is far rougher, the waves are far higher. He can see dark clouds out to sea, and the occasional flash of lightning on the horizon, although it's too far to hear any rumbles of thunder. He starts exploring this side, starts exploring this beach. He doesn't know exactly what it is he's looking for, but he knows that he'll recognize it when he finds it. And after some time exploring, he sees what looks like a part of a chest poking out from the sand. He goes over and with his hands he digs around that chest until he can pull the chest out of the sand and onto the beach. He then breaks the lock open and opens the chest. And inside he finds a book. And while sat down next to the chest, he starts flicking through the pages of that book. He starts reading the pages of the book and looking at the images in that book. And he realizes that it's teaching some kind of knowledge, something he has to do. and that it's going to take a long time to do it. And he realizes that this column of stone that's next to where he's just found the chest, that's just off the tree line, is there for a reason. And he reads that he needs to carve a specific sculpture if he's to get what it is that he seeks. And he reads in the book what that sculpture is supposed to look like, what carving he needs to do. And then in the chest he sees that there's a hammer and chisel. He takes the hammer and chisel and starts chipping away at that stone, chipping away carefully, in small amounts at a time, chipping away what isn't necessary with the idea that it will leave just that which is necessary. And he chips away and he chips away as the day wears on and the sun starts to set. He then sets up a camp on the beach for the night, lights a fire, has something to eat, falls asleep in a makeshift tent to the sounds of the water on the shore and the sight of millions of stars in the sky. And the next morning, after having something to eat, he carries on chipping away at that stone, chipping away and carving, removing what isn't necessary, to leave what is essential. And he continues to chip away and carve away. And by the middle of the day, he begins to notice what is beginning to form, and that it's starting to look like a person. And he carries on chipping away and chipping away for the rest of the day, and then settles down again for a night before carrying on again the next morning. And he does this for a number of days and nights, chipping away at this sculpture, removing what isn't necessary, and leaving just that which is essential. And after a number of days of chipping away, he finally finishes the sculpture and sees that it looks like a person facing into the woods. But he doesn't seem to have got what it is that he came here for. And so he doesn't fully understand. He's invested a lot of time and energy into chipping away at this sculpture. And he sits down on the beach, wondering what he's supposed to have learned, wondering what all this means. He's removed all that stone, and yet this sculpture is just a sculpture of a person. It hasn't taught him anything. And he has something to eat and he falls asleep that night, wondering what this could all mean. And he tries to let his brain process that, let his brain work on what this could all mean. And he processes the last few days, processes all the effort he's taken, all the information he's read. He was somehow supposed to gain knowledge from this, something that enriches your life, but he hasn't seen any treasures, and he can't figure out the clue. And then during his dream, he starts to have unusual thoughts of being too warm and taking off some layers, thoughts of being too cold and putting new layers on, thoughts of getting to know a best friend or a loved one. And then by the morning, he awakes having an idea about what it is he's supposed to have learned from carving this sculpture and from chipping away all that material and leaving only that which is necessary for the sculpture. And he realizes that this whole journey wasn't about gaining some kind of financial incentive. It's about enriching the inner life and learning about yourself and gaining a deep knowledge about yourself, about who you are, who you want to be, how you are and how you want to be, and how to get from who you are and how you are to who you want to be and how. And he realized that's what working on this sculpture has taught him. That was the insight he was supposed to gain. And just as he looks at the sculpture, having gained that insight, just like a snowman, the sculpture seems to melt into nothing. Almost like it was built out of sand and the sand has just collapsed to the ground and merged in with the rest of the sand. And he placed the book back in the chest. And he reburied the chest and prepared for a journey back home. And he cut back through all the trees, all the way back to the beach he arrived on, pushed his boat into the water, started the motor, travelled back to his boat, got on his boat, brought up his small boat, raised the anchor and set back off again, homeward. And as the story ended, the man closed the book, aware that he had learned something about himself from this story that he decided to read. And while he mindfully processed that story, he stood up from the beach, walked down to the shore, could feel the way the sand went from dry and grainy to damp and stodgy, where his feet would sink slightly into the sand with each step, and he could see the area of dryness spread from under his foot each time he placed his foot down, as it compressed the sand and pushed the water out the way, and could notice with each step how when he raised his foot, that water rushed back in again, making that sand damp again. And he walked to the water's edge, and he walked a little way into the water and could feel the warm sea water around his ankles, feel the movement of the water around his ankles and his feet, the way it pulled the sand in and out, that he could feel through his toes. He took a few deep breaths of the sea air. He could feel the warmth of the sun on his face, as he enjoyed and processed the insights he'd gained from reading that story, and allowing himself to become absorbed in that story. And he processed those insights as he just listened to the natural world around him and learned about who he is, how he is in this world, what his purpose is, those parts of him he likes, the parts of him he'd like to change and shift, and who he would like to be. And he learned from that sculpture. And then after spending some time allowing all that to integrate, he then started travelling home, still thinking about how he's integrating all this new learning. And on arrival home, he had something to eat. He relaxed for a while, before going up to bed, closing his eyes and drifting comfortably asleep. And as he drifted comfortably asleep, he began to dream about being on that island, about running his hands around the sculpture, feeling the handiwork that was done, feeling a connection with that work, admiring that sculpture, learning from that sculpture, feeling the smoothness of the stone to the backdrop of a distant storm. As the waves lashed on the shore, and he felt himself drawn deeper and deeper into this healing dream as he drifted and floated deeper and deeper asleep, internalizing and understanding this in a whole new level, previously unknown, on an instinctive level. Until his dream began to fade, and he began to just drift even deeper and comfortably asleep.